Tennessee, Alabama. Obviously, this one's going to be in Knoxville. This is another game we've been circling all offseason. The cigars are going to be out for one of these teams afterwards. Right now, the line is -2.5 Alabama on the road, and the over-under's 55.5. I know you have some strong
Come
thoughts
here!
on that one. But, Jake, what you got for this one to start?
This is the make me feel better again game. Just think about the mental roller coaster that both Tennessee and Alabama fans have been on. The last 3 weeks. The ultimate high. The ultimate high. You look at Bama, Kalen DeBoer. You're playing Georgia at home. It's a changing of the guard. You win it. Hey, we got our guy. We're going to keep this ship cruising. Then you, oh my God, lose to Vanderbilt. To Vanderbilt. You let the fat kid with asthma beat you in the decathlon. That's what happened. All respect to Vanderbilt. Then if you're Tennessee, you're Tennessee. You come into this year, hey, a lot of high hopes. Right? Maybe we're a year away. We really like what our defense looks like. And all of a sudden, you're rolling kids. You're rolling them. Nico looks good. It's making sense. Then all of a sudden, you have a game against Oklahoma where you're like, oh, all right, we're on the road. Nico's first SEC road game. We still won it. Look at us. Josh Heupel's talking about we're a defensive team that runs the ball. That's right, because this offense is going to figure it out. And then Arkansas. Oh, no. It goes off the cliff. Then you're like, all right, well, it was a road game thing with Nico. Let's get him back home against Florida, a team their head coach is basically fired. We'll beat him to death, and everybody will feel good again. And then you're in a fist fight with Florida. You're having to beat Florida in, overtime now? So if you're a Tennessee and Alabama fan, this is the game that's going to get you that little bit of that high again, right? They say you never get as you're still chasing that first time to get you as excited or whatever it is. This feels like that type of game. But when you look at it and break it down, I'm with Blaine. I don't know how you don't take the under in this game, which means that it'll be 70-63. But Tennessee, a little banged up on defense, Blaine. You brought up they had a linebacker who's now out for the rest of the season.
That guy.
Is this the game where Alabama's defense, because of Tennessee's lack of explosive playability, right, gets back to kind of being themselves a little bit, and Jalen Milroe ends up being enough? David, when I look at this matchup, I really don't. I am. It's not clueless, but this is about as close to a pick'em as you could possibly get from
the trajectory of both of these teams the last couple weeks. It is very perplexing, especially the way that Nico started off the year. And look, that's just what happens when you come into SEC play sometimes.
Yeah,
and every time I feel like, okay, you know what? I'm going to take Alabama. I feel good about Alabama. Then I think of something. I think about like Rocket Sanders averaging 5 yards a carry against South Carolina. I think about, oh, wait, the way Diego Pavia was running the football when they had to play Vanderbilt. Are they going to run Nico more? Like, Nico has all the tools for Tennessee. I went back and rewatched the game against Florida again this morning. Like, he can make all the throws. He has all the tools. The fumble at the mesh point was bad. The interception that he threw was bad. The mistakes are bad, right? He's a young guy, and just right now, I like Alabama's chances to go on the road and win the football game, but there's just always something that sticks in the back of my mind, like, here's how Tennessee could exploit a certain area.
And all the things you just described about Nico are physical attributes. Mm-hmm. His ability to run, his arm talent, being able to throw the ball far, and we've seen him be able to throw the changeup. I think his biggest problem is mental right now. Mm-hmm. I don't know if he trusts himself down the field. And throwing that interception against Florida, I don't think helped. So, but Blaine, I want to ask you let's start with Tennessee's offense versus Alabama's defense. If you're Josh Heupel this week, what are you telling Nico to let him, because you're going, as good as Tennessee's defense has been, Alabama's going to find a way to score, I think. I think they're going to find a way to score with Jalen Milroe. And Ryan Williams, he's a big playmaker. If you're Josh Heupel, what are you telling Nico mentally? Are you like, you know what? You got to stop thinking so damn much. You're thinking so much, it's analysis by paralysis. We're going to call shot plays. Because against, this past week against Florida, they had 3 shots that were wide open. And Nico missed all 3 of them. All 3 of them deep, and one over the middle where he had a guy. What are you telling Nico this week, like mentally, like to get him ready to go out and have a big game, to be that guy that Tennessee fans and a lot of the college football world are waiting to see?
First thing I would tell him is to quit overthinking things. The one thing you can always tell with phenomenal athletes, whether that's on defense or offense, and it's kind of the conversation we've had about Harold Perkins through the years. You're thinking too much. If you think too much, it slows the natural pace of your gameplay. right? And you really don't know what you're looking at. And I saw this, I've said this for multiple weeks going back to the Oklahoma game. They might have won, but Nico hasn't looked good against an opponent with a pulse. And we can sit here and talk about Oklahoma's defense and Arkansas's defense. That's all I heard about. You saw what we saw in the Florida game. You have to let him go. Sooner or later, the bird has to leave the nest. You can't be out there scared to make a mistake, because if you're scared to make a mistake, that's when the mistakes happen. You have to go play football. Be who we think that you are. The guy we're paying, what, $6 million or something like that? You have to let him loose, man. You have to let him loose. And it's Josh Heupel's job to put him in the best situations. I will give Nico this credit. I think the offensive line the last 2 weeks have been terrible.
Yeah.
Have been really, really bad, especially on that left side of the offensive line. And I'm not sure if they lost a guy or not. But we can talk about Alabama's personnel on defense, and they haven't looked great. But there's NFL guys running around on that field.
Well, I said the same thing about Georgia. That's why I said the same
sooner
thing
or later,
about
your
Georgia.
personnel has to play who they are.
Well,
and right now, if you're Tennessee fan one, I'm worried. I'm worried about Nico in this football game, because he's getting to the point now where he takes a snap, he looks at his main read, he ducks his eyes, and he runs.
Yeah.
That's what he does. That's not going to win you this football game, because this isn't Florida on the other side. This is Jalen Milroe and this offense.
David, let me bring up this point. One thing that helped Georgia in the second half, and I think took a lot of the thinking out of it, was that they were going really fast.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's, you ask why some quarterbacks are so much better in a 2-minute drill than they are during the rest of the game. Well, it's because you're taking a lot of the thinking out of it. Not that you just can't think, but you know this better than anybody. You're going fast. You're having to make those decisions. You don't have time to sit there and think on them. I really believe, and I said Georgia needs to go up-tempo more. What did they do against Auburn coming out? They went up-tempo and it worked. Tennessee isn't going as fast as what Tennessee normally does, because they're saying, you know what, I guess we're going to have to win this game with defense.
Yeah.
So we don't want the defense out there for all these snaps. But one of the biggest advantages to take the thinking out of it and playing quarterback for Josh Heupel and going that fast is it makes it simpler. You're catching defenses in base more because you're going faster. The math is already done. It's not a Sudoku, right? It's simple addition. So if you're Tennessee, at some point you say, you know what, we got to go back to being us on offense. We got to start going fast. And damn it, if we got the defense out there for extra snaps, well, then they're out there. But we have to at some point, and you may get a 2-for-1. You may be able to catch Bama because they're actually been pretty predictable in what they're doing defensively. You may catch them in base a lot or in man-free a lot or whatever they're doing and make it easier for Nico to think. But you're also going so fast that you don't have time for Nico to sit there and think about it in between plays. Well, I'm getting this call in. Well, I guess we're going slow because it's going to be a defensive game. I just don't need to screw it up. That's what it seems like.
It'd be interesting to see if they switch that up against Alabama or not, because you don't want Jalen Milroe to be on the field any more than he needs to be. But if that's what puts your offense in the best position, then that's what you need to do. If I was allowed to give one recommendation to Tennessee on offense, it would be this: to roll Nico out more. And they did it some against Florida and had a lot of success. I would do it even more. Think about all the problems we just mentioned, rolling him out solves, right? One, it helps simplify your progressions because you're not having to read
eliminating half
field,
the field,
right? You eliminate half the field. 2, helps the offensive line. 3, you get a young quarterback who can run the football really well already on the move to set up for the run if he doesn't let the football go. Now, one point that people will counter with is, yeah, but then you become so right-hand dominant, you're only doing that to his right hand. They rolled him to the left against Florida, and he had several completions.
Yeah, well, y'all's ass got to move the ball at some point. So right-hand dominant,
and they
left-hand
run the ball
dominant,
so well that you can also roll off a play action. Incidentally, I've been calling for Alabama to do this more with Jalen Milroe, too, so I'd be doing it more with both the quarterbacks to get running quarterbacks on the move early with more of an RPO type system, but especially Tennessee, I'd be rolling him all the time.
If I'm Tennessee and Alabama from a defensive standpoint, I am keeping contained this entire game. Like you almost have to approach Jalen Milroe the same way you approach Nico. You can't, 1, rush past him. 2, we're keeping you in the pocket, right? You're not going to get outside the pocket.
That, and I'm running 75% zone coverage.
Yeah, I'm not getting in man.
I'm running nothing but zone. I don't care what we do. You got to have some, unless you're apparently Miami, who just only runs man, you have to have some zone and some man concepts. Sometimes you have split coverage where you go half and half. I am giving Jalen Milroe all the zone coverage because it does 2 things. 1, it does cause him trouble when he tries to elongate the play. We saw that against South Carolina, that interception he threw in the end zone. He didn't see that corner in cover 2 working back. But also, when he takes off and runs, at least some of my DBs or second-level guys' eyes aren't turned around in man coverage where Jalen Milroe hits his head for 80 yards. But to that point, right, to Alabama, the schematical point on defense, guys, they run a lot of man. They run a lot of man. So to your point, David, if I'm going to roll out, it's a lot easier for me to pick guys in man than it is in zone, just like in basketball, because a lot of times, now you do some match stuff, some mixed stuff out of man. We know that. Just go look at the Ripley's match stuff that Saban does. But a lot of times, it's cat coverage. I've got this cat. You've got that cat. If we run into each other, there ain't no switching. So if you run pick plays and eliminate half the field, if Alabama's going to sit their ass in man coverage the whole game, you can pick them apart, and then that helps Nico in the run game. But I don't think Tennessee can run and hide in this one on offense. Because eventually, as good as you are and as good as Tennessee's on defense, Jalen Milroe is going to make a guy miss in the backfield and throw it to Ryan Williams, who's going to do a quadruple backflip with a suplex jump, land on one hand, and go score.
And
at some point, you've got to take some chances.
Yeah, we saw this in the South Carolina game last week. Alabama's offensive line is vulnerable in certain spots. And you can say what you want about South Carolina's defensive line.
Who's got a better defensive line, South Carolina or Tennessee? I'll give you credit. Last week, you said South Carolina's got one of the best defensive lines in the country. I said I thought they were really good, but not one of the best in the country. Watching them cats run around on defense, South Carolina always
South Carolina has 2 first-rounders playing end.
And Dylan Stewart may be better.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Freshman.
Yeah, and Bernard's a dog too. But like right now, I would maybe lean a little bit Tennessee because of depth.
Yeah.
But this front for Tennessee is for real, right? And if you're Alabama, you're walking to another week where you're going to have to game plan these guys up front because your tackles did not play good against South Carolina. And these guys, Pierce and all these guys are going to come in and try to get after.
It's a money-making game for them, too.
Absolutely, for 4 quarters. So it's going to be interesting. I'm just so excited about the game plan.
Oh, you know, one last point here. I know we're about ready to move on, but Tennessee in the red zone is another thing that stood out to me. They move the ball so well in between the 20s, but we always talk about, like, play callers make their money in the red zone. That's one of those things where when they're not able to have these clearing concepts and they're not able to run digs that are wide open, like Nico has been struggling more in the red zone. I don't know if that's just like the type of plays they're dialing up for him, or that's the thing that in the bowl game, the quarterback
against Iowa. That's where the
quarterback ran for 4 touchdowns or something.
You want to know the great equalizer to the field shrinking in the red zone? It's being able to truly get a hat on a hat, and that's what the quarterback run does. They just haven't done it. And I get it. You don't want to get him. Some people are like, well, they're trying to wait for these big games for the Bama game to run him or whatever. At some point, you got to throw that script away. He needs to start running because it's a huge thing for him. Hey, what's up, YouTube? Do us a favor. A lot of y'all been subscribing. We appreciate that. We love y'all. We feel y'all. It's real. If you haven't yet, please hit that subscribe button and keep sharing the show.